What are stances and why are they used? Most martial artists bounce about all the time, like in Western boxing or in Taekwondo. The approach to footwork in traditional Kung Fu is completely different. Every single Kung Fu technique, or pattern as we usually call it, is based on certain ways to position your feet and legs, called stances. Kung Fu stances evolved from real fighting when masters discovered that certain ways of positioning brought them advantages in combat, made them more stable, and helped them to cover vital parts of their body. It's important that you spend a reasonable amount of time on fundamentals such as stances. The stances are like the foundation of a building. The more stable and higher quality the foundation, the more stable and higher quality the building can become. The same goes for stances in Kung Fu. Some uninformed people may consider this fundamental training a waste of time. The contrary, in fact, is true. By spending adequate time preparing the foundations, you can accelerate the remainder of the training and learning that follows. This is a first application of a tactic we like to use. Start later, arrive earlier. In the past, students only learned the horse riding stance and practiced it for a year or two. They learned nothing more until they had earned the trust of the master to persuade him to continue the teaching. You won't need to wait for a year until you learn your first patterns and applications, but let this background inspire you to take the time to practice and acquire the skills in the basic stances. Once you're proficient in them, you can perform half of every Kung Fu pattern, namely the bottom half. No matter what kind of punch, strike or thrust you use, the stances always stay the same. Flying patterns performed in the air are an exception, of course. Furthermore, stance training, or Chan Chuan, is the essential exercise to start cultivating your internal force by gathering Qi, or vital energy. You learn how to do that soon in a later lesson. But first, let's learn the physical aspect of standing correctly. One more thing to mention before we carry on. If you learned Kung Fu before, you surely have been taught one of the many versions of the following stances. You might think that what you're about to learn seems too high, too low, too wide, too narrow, aligned differently, or something else. That might be true if you compare to what you were used to. Follow the instructions with an open heart and an empty cup. You will discover the reasons for the details used in our version of the stances later on in this program. The guitarists of a folk music band and those of a heavy metal band play the same instrument, but they use it differently. Who is wrong? Is there a wrong? This lesson is taken from The Entrance to the Chamber of Shaolin Kung Fu, my 6-month online program to help you build a solid foundation in traditional Southern Shaolin Kung Fu. Not only does it provide even more detailed explanation on fundamental stances, footwork and movement principles, but also covers the 2 pillars of genuine Kung Fu, which are neglected or even lost in most schools, namely combat application and developing internal force. May the free lessons of this series benefit your practice and understanding. Subscribe now and follow the links below to visit us at the Shaolin Treasure House.